This is New Zealand, a country of staggering beauty. Snow-capped peaks plunge into glacial lakes. Rolling green pastures stretch to volcanic cliffs and endless coastlines. It's the sort of place that feels more like a dream than a real country. Remote, peaceful, clean, a paradise at the edge of the world. And yet, this paradise is emptying out. Every year, tens of thousands of New Zealanders, or Kiwis, as they call themselves, pack up and leave. They don't leave for adventure or romance. They leave because, for many, the numbers simply don't add up. On paper, New Zealand should be one of the happiest, most secure nations on Earth. Its 5.3 million people enjoy a stable democracy, top-tier education, near-universal healthcare, low crime, and an egalitarian culture where modesty is valued more than money. It ranks high on every global index that measures quality of life. But underneath that serenity lies a quiet, long-running crisis. Because New Zealand is small and far, extremely far, from everywhere else. If you pull up a world map, there's a good chance it's missing entirely from the corner. The nearest big market is Australia, about 2,000 kilometers away. The next? Singapore, 8 hours by plane. That distance shapes everything, the trade routes, the cost of goods, and even the types of industries that can survive there. This isolation creates a contradiction, a society that's peaceful and self-contained, but an economy that struggles to compete at scale. Let's put size in perspective. New Zealand has about the same population as Sydney, a single Australian city. Its entire economy is smaller than the GDP of Greater Melbourne. For some sectors, that's crippling. Take finance. In theory, Wellington or Auckland could host major financial operations, but why would a multinational set up there when Singapore, Hong Kong, or Sydney offer deeper markets, faster connections, and proximity to billions of customers? The same logic applies to tech. A startup building cloud software in Auckland faces longer shipping times for hardware, higher data costs, and a limited investor pool. Venture capital funds, which are plentiful in Silicon Valley or Sydney, are scarce here. Even logistics giants face hurdles. A container of goods leaving the port of Tauranga might spend more money and time crossing the Tasman Sea than it does crossing entire oceans once it reaches Asia. So, New Zealand's economic base is narrow. It's not a manufacturing hub. It's not a global financial center. Instead, it's a mix of agriculture, tourism, and, increasingly, real estate. Agriculture has long been New Zealand's lifeblood. Its rolling pastures produce milk, butter, lamb, and wine exported to every corner of the globe. New Zealand's dairy industry, led by giants like Fonterra, feeds hundreds of millions, especially in China, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East. A single dairy cow in Waikato contributes more to export revenue than a dozen factory workers in some industrial economies. This efficiency is the result of rich volcanic soil, temperate climate, and advanced mechanization. The country produces far more food than it consumes, nearly 10 times its population's needs. But here's the catch. Agriculture is a capital-intensive, not labor-intensive, business. A massive sheep station covering thousands of hectares might be run by just a handful of people. The tractors are self-guided. The irrigation systems are automated. The profits are impressive, but the jobs are few. In short, the farms are rich, but the farmers are disappearing. And if you're a 25-year-old with a degree in data science or engineering, you're not moving to Canterbury to milk cows. That leaves the other half of the economy, housing. New Zealand's real estate sector isn't just a bubble, it's an ecosystem. Banks, construction companies, realtors, insurance firms, and even parts of government rely on housing activity for growth. Buying, selling, renting, and financing homes account for nearly half of GDP. The result? Some of the most unaffordable housing in the developed world. In Auckland, the median home costs more than 10 times the median income, worse than New York or London. In Wellington, tiny flats fetch prices that would buy villas in southern Europe. And this in a country with plenty of land. Why? Because it's not land that's scarce, it's zoning, infrastructure, and labor. Strict planning laws restrict new development, local councils resist density, and construction costs are sky-high due to materials that must be imported across oceans. The government tried to cool prices. In 2018, it banned foreign buyers from purchasing residential property. But before the ban, foreign purchasers made up just 3% of the market, and Australians, who are exempt, accounted for most of that slice. Wealthy Australians continue to buy holiday homes in Queenstown, Wanaka, and coastal regions, drawn by the scenery and the tax perks. Unlike Australia, New Zealand doesn't charge stamp duty, the upfront 3% fee paid on property purchases. That means a multi-million-dollar home costs millions less across the sea. So, property stayed hot. Even when the government introduced new taxes on investment properties and capped rent increases, the fundamental imbalance, low supply, high demand, limited alternatives, kept prices soaring. For young people, the math stopped working. Why stay in Auckland, pay rent that eats half your paycheck, when you can move to Sydney or Melbourne, earn 30% more, and still find better career options? This is the paradox. Many Kiwis aren't escaping high housing costs, they're heading straight into even pricier markets. The difference is opportunity. In Australia, there are more universities, more large corporations, and more pathways for advancement. If you're a nurse, an architect, or a film editor, Australia simply has more jobs, and bigger ones. Take healthcare. A Kiwi medical graduate might spend years waiting for a residency placement at home. In Australia, hospitals are desperate for staff. Or tech, Sydney's fintech sector alone employs more people than New Zealand's entire ICT industry. Education is another draw. Australian universities like Melbourne, Sydney, and Queensland have world reputations and huge capacity. New Zealand students pay the same tuition as Australians and can even access government-backed student loans if they meet residency rules. For many, studying in Australia is simply the smart move, and once they graduate, they often stay. And there's no language barrier, no visa drama, no cultural shock. A Kiwi in Sydney doesn't immigrate in the emotional sense, they just move across the ditch. The relationship between the two nations is remarkably open, something like a mini-European Union in the South Pacific. Citizens can live, work, and own property on either side of the Tasman without much red tape. At any given moment, around 600,000 New Zealand-born people live in Australia, roughly 1 in 10 Kiwis. Meanwhile, about 90,000 Australians live in New Zealand, many of them older, wealthier retirees seeking a slower pace of life and a view of Lake Wakatipu. So the flow of people is unequal. New Zealand sends its youth, and in return it gets retirees and tourists. That creates a strange demographic pyramid, one that's top-heavy with age and light on young labour. To fill those gaps, the government has leaned on immigration, primarily from China, India, and Southeast Asia, bringing in skilled workers and students. But many of those migrants, after gaining residency, also look across the Tasman for better pay and career growth. For some, New Zealand is a stepping stone, an easier entry point into the region before moving on to Australia. So why not just close the tap, renegotiate the migration agreement? In theory, New Zealand could. In practice, it's politically toxic. Remember, 1/10 of New Zealand citizens live in Australia, and most Kiwis like the flexibility of being able to move freely. Trying to restrict that movement would anger voters, damage trade relations, and undermine a relationship that's one of the friendliest between any two nations on Earth. And the truth is, not all who leave are lost. Many come back, often richer, more experienced, bringing savings and skills from across the Tasman. The problem is timing. They return later in life, not when they're building careers or families. That delay means decades of missed productivity and innovation. Fixing the Kiwi drain will take more than nostalgia. It means diversifying the economy beyond housing and agriculture. New Zealand could leverage its clean green reputation to lead in agritech, renewable energy, and specialized manufacturing, industries that build on what it already does best while providing high-value jobs. It also needs to invest more heavily in research and higher education, expanding places in universities and fostering partnerships with Asian and North American institutions to keep top talent at home. And, perhaps most importantly, it must tackle housing affordability head-on by reforming planning laws and boosting infrastructure. The good news? New Zealand has the means to do it. Its debt-to-GDP ratio is modest, giving the government fiscal space to invest. It's politically stable, trusted, and internationally respected. And it remains one of the safest, cleanest, and most beautiful nations on Earth. That matters more than it sounds. Those intangibles, the sense of peace, space, and balance, are currency too. They're what draw billionaires to buy lakeside retreats and tourists to spend billions each year. They're also what can draw Kiwis back, if there are enough reasons to build their futures here. New Zealand's story is a lesson in the economics of paradise. Isolation preserves beauty but limits growth. Closeness to Australia creates opportunity but drains talent. It's a country rich in nature but increasingly poor in people. Still, it's not doomed, far from it. Nations have reinvented themselves before. New Zealand has the resources, the brains, and the heart to do it again. If it can find a way to turn its natural beauty into lasting opportunity, then maybe, just maybe, the next generation of Kiwis will stop leaving paradise behind. Thank you for watching. If you want more deep dives on economics and politics, subscribe to World Economy.